Today we're installing the GP suspension rear shocks for a 14 plus Harley Davidson Bagger. To start off, I have the bike lifted up. It's secure, so it's not going to fall over on me. I have the rear wheel just floating off of the ground, and the tools you need is a 3/4 inch socket on a wobbly head with a ratchet, of course, a 4mm Allen wrench on a ratchet as a hex head or whatever, doesn't really matter, and a 10mm wrench. First thing we're going to be installing is the dual position lower reservoir mount bracket. It's configurable in a couple of different positions, but today we're going to be covering a stock motorcycle, stock hidden configuration. Now that we have both brackets installed, I'm going to remove both of the stock shocks off the bike, and I'm going to remove the bottom mounts first so I don't have the top of the shock swing down and hit something. Now that we have the stock shocks off, we're going to go and install our shocks. I already pulled it out of the bag, and I'm going to leave the bubble wrap on the rubber band or on the reservoir. It's just so it doesn't get scratched when we're doing the installation. And to make things easier on me, so I don't scratch anything and that I have good clearance for my tools, I'm going to actually install the lower shock mount first. And then I'll get the top mount in afterwards while I line it up with the jack. Now that we've got both the upper and lower shock mounts installed and torqued to the factory settings, we're going to install the reservoir mount. And one thing to note is our hose rotates on the upper mount of the shock. So it's important to note that when you're installing this, that you're not turning it while you're pulling on the hose, because it could put a little bit of a bind on the O-ring that's in there. This is how you're going to route the hose for a stock configuration. We wanted to leave enough hose for other methods of installation. For those who have different fenders or different shock mounts, we want to just have enough hose for you to be able to do whatever you wanted. A quick note for when you're routing your hose on your reservoir, we designed our shock and the hose for this shock to have multiple positions. The reservoir is going in different places, like we have it hidden here behind because we have the stock fender trim. We can have a high mount, a low mount, and this hidden mount. And to accommodate all those things, we have a long hose. Now, to keep the hose in its most tidy and safest way to keep it from chafing, I have it looped here at the high mount for this stock configuration. To get the reservoir attached, I'm going to slide the clamp over the reservoir. And then I'm going to locate using one of my fasteners that was in the smaller bag. The shorter one, I'm going to put to where it immediately threads into the bracket right there. So the longer one goes into the recessed hole that also clamps the clamp to the reservoir. Both of them go through the reservoir mount plate, but for right now, just going to screw in the lower. It's a little bit easier to do just one at a time, or just to do one before you massage the hose around and set your height on your reservoir, because it will make the installation of the second bolt a little bit easier. Just keeping everything just past hand tight so I can go and tighten it over a little bit later. Just at the end of everything. Just make sure everything's snugged up and torqued to a reasonable spec. All right now, because everything's loose and flexible, I'm just gonna snug everything up. What's important here is that my hose is secure to the chassis right there, and the hose is secure to this mount right there. Finally, just wanna make sure that I'm in a good position. There's not a bunch of extra torsion or load, side load on the reservoir that can cause anything silly to happen. But the position of the reservoir, I have access to my compression adjuster easily. So now that I have all that kind of sorted out, I'm just gonna snug everything up close to final torque. Now that everything's snugged up, we're gonna cover making sure the shock is symmetrical on both sides, that all the clicker settings are the same, the shock's free length is the same length, and the amount of preload on the spring is the same between both shocks. We pride ourselves on our ability to customize everybody's suspension to them individually. It's not just a cookie cutter, this is gonna work, but for starters, we're going to check and make sure the clickers are at the same position. So to identify which one is which, our rebound is on the lower mount of the shock and our compression is on the reservoir. So we're gonna start by screwing them all the way in, like fully screwed in. So, and everything stands, it goes for righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, just like you would if you're looking from the bottom of the rebound to the top of it. You would screw it in clockwise. So I've got it screwed all the way in right now, and I'm gonna count 14 clicks out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, same thing for the compression. Screw it all the way in, screwing down. For the compression, I counted 13 clicks out. It can be 13, 12 to 14 clicks, doesn't really matter. It's gonna be a pretty good starting point. And finally, I'm gonna grab a measuring tape and I'm gonna measure my spring length installed. The wheel is still off the ground, and that's just, we're to make sure that the number between both shocks is identical. Thanks for watching the installation video on the 2014 Harley-Davidson Bagger with GP shocks for it. We hope the installation goes as easy for you as it went for us. If you have any questions or concerns that weren't covered inside the video, give us a call the fastest way. You can call us. The phone number or our email will be found in the pamphlet. We hope you enjoy the shocks as much as we enjoy designing them.